iconic Paul McCartney got back live. A once-in-a-lifetime must-see event. Paul McCartney performing a catalogue of music that's formed the soundtracks of our lives. Casey Centre, October 14th. Get tickets now at highvtix.com.
Derek, what's the guarantee? Derek?
Mike, time to make history. Players at Circa Million make 5 picks against the spread each week with quarterly and full season payouts.
Circa Survivor entries choose one team each week with no point spread. The last one standing wins it all.
We have $21 million on the line. Are you in? Visit circasports.com for details.
Scott Dochterman. Chad Leistikow. Together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by Gameday Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to Legends and Listeners on Iowa Everywhere. Special Friday morning edition. That's 2 in 1 week, Scott. We're riding high after the Big Grove Brewery show. Moving into episode 104 here in the Channel Seed Studios. Chad Leistikow here of the Des Moines Register. I'm back in Iowa. Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Running around like crazy in Las Vegas, but he's not partying. He's been interviewing a lot of different people. So we're going to try to sort through what's in his head, and I'm going to let him carry the show. Scott, first off, how you doing? And James Franklin, your guy, was whining about Big Ten Media Days being in Vegas, not in Chicago or Indy, etc. So do you agree with him? What was the lay of the land like this week out there? Way out there on the West Coast-ish.
Honestly, it didn't bother me a bit. I was happy to have it here. Indy's great. I loved it. Chicago is my favorite. The only thing I didn't like about it was driving out of it. Happiness is seeing Aurora in your rearview mirror. But this is having it all under one roof at the here in Vegas has been really good. They've. It's a humongous ballroom, so there's plenty of space and room, but it's actually not as big as like the Dome. So I think you could get around just fine, to see things and some closer things. But anyway, I liked it, and I know James is kind of a chronic complainer at times, and he was talking about the 9 versus 8 games, which everybody was to some extent, but he was really adamant about it. So. I'm fine with Vegas, but I'd be fine in Indianapolis. I'd be fine in Chicago and, maybe even Davenport, Iowa.
There you go. Well, I was wondering. I haven't missed one of these in forever, so I was curious what I was missing out on. It sounds like it was a good time, I guess, right? 3 days, 18 teams. A lot of fun out there. Did you have fun at least? Did you get some fun, or has it been all work?
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, there's a lot going on. Obviously, it's Vegas, so last night stayed out way too late, and it kind of reached that point in my life where it was the point of that time of night, and of course it's Vegas time, so it's like 10:30 Vegas time, like 12:30 Iowa time, and I've got on my left shoulder it's like you should probably tone things down. You got a lot of interviews tomorrow. Then the other one, you're only in Vegas once, go for it. And I'm like, oh,
which one won?
Well, I only had a couple hours sleep, so I'll let you decide which one won. And I regret it because I'm too old for this stuff. But here we are.
All right. So after 3 full days of interviews with 18 teams, 18 coaches, 54 players, 1 commissioner, countless athletic officials and directors, what was your number one takeaway of the week, Scott?
I think it's how contentious everything got with the college football playoff, and it started off from the very beginning with Tony Petitti and my colleague Stuart Mandel, and
I read that piece.
A lot of strong commentary about what he had to say about his 4-4-2-2-1 plan, and how unpopular it is, but I think there was a there was a really interesting part that he discussed about 8-4 teams that really sent the antenna up. And today I met with him. We talked close to an hour, more than half an hour on record and a lot off. But one of the examples he kind of painted to me and why he used 8-4 was, say, USC. And he goes, look at USC last year and the schedule it played, the teams it played, Penn State, Michigan. I think they played Oregon. They played a lot of teams that were really good in the Big
Notre
Ten.
Dame. Yeah.
But then in the non-conference, this was his point. They also play LSU and they play play Notre Dame. So if they go 7-2 in the Big Ten, that's a really good record. And he said that's a record that should get you in competition for a playoff spot. And then in the non-conference, they're playing two quality opponents. They're very, very good teams. And if you lose both of those, you're 8-4. But you're telling me that they're not good enough to be competitive in a 16-team playoff. And so he used that as part of his, logic or whatever as to why he was continuing with the 4-4-2-2-2-2-2-1 plan. And we just need to come up with a big, quick key for it.
Right. To be clear, he's wanting 4 automatic Big Ten bids rather than the 5 conference champs, which is the SEC wants now is 5 conference champs, 11 at large. Petitti wants 4 automatics for the Big Ten, 4 automatics for the SEC, 2 for the others, and fill it out with the rest.
Yeah, and so out of that, first of all, the Big 12 and ACC are adamant about 5+11. And it's mainly for them, even though it would make sense logistically, it's about perception. It's that they do not want to be perceived as anything less than what the Big Ten and SEC are.
Sure.
The SEC is kind of playing the field. It's like, hey, we can go 5+11, we can go for whatever. We're fine with whatever, and we're going to just poke everybody. Just be a troll on this one. And then Tony Petitti, his plan, which I'm writing about, and we'll have more detail than what I'll explain here, but is that about 2 years ago, even before Oregon and Washington were accepted as Big Ten members, he discussed this with his coaches and with everybody else to say, what are some of the issues? And the football coaches came back to him, and they were very adamant that they did not like 9 versus 8 league games that was going on. Big Ten had 9, SEC and ACC had 8. And they felt like that was really an unfair advantage for them because, as we know, there are a lot of times when a good team goes somewhere in November and loses. And sometimes there's those layup weeks when you're talking about the SEC, the Mercers or, Furman or whoever they play, the week before their big rivalry game. And they felt like that it was really costing them. And it was an uneven part of the selection committee's evaluation. So he started looking at a plan, and remember, he was a longtime executive with Major League Baseball, and he's the one who devised the extra wild cards and the wild card games, and that's something that he was heavily involved in scheduling changes and stuff like that. So he went to work, and he figured that based on the data over the last 10 plus years, that 4 is the average of what the Big Ten would get, and the SEC is about the same, and the other 2 leagues would get, the ACC 2-ish, the Big 12 based on its current constitution maybe 1.5, and then ultimately, but he felt like this was a fair plan. Plus, there would still be a couple spots at the end for at-larges, and he just felt like, and then the leagues can decide. Like if the SEC is still at 8. And the Big Ten's at 9. Well, at least the Big Ten has a chance to decide these are going to be our 4 qualifiers. There's going to be theirs, and then maybe at the back end it's filled in with whatever. Obviously, it's been widely panned, and because most people think of it as 5+11, and then and I'll let you talk because I've been going on nauseum here. But the one thing that he was saying about that is that he feels like, and the Big Ten coaches in unison and lockstep said, all of them over the last few days, and athletic directors, that they feel like the selection committee is already asked to do too much, and to try to evaluate 4 more teams, or than what they already are, is a big ask, especially when evaluating 9-3 team from X conference, 9-3 team from this one, 10-2 from that one, but didn't play a very good schedule. And to try to line them all up and see who's in and who's out, that was awfully too difficult.
Well, so you've talked about this before. Let's start with the Big Ten's point of view here first. And I heard Beth Getz, I watched her video from out there, and she's right. Tony Petitti is representing what the Big Ten coaches and athletic directors want. It's not like he's doing this on his own, correct?
That is correct. Absolutely, 100%.
So I think that's important for our listeners to understand that this is not Tony Petitti going out on a limb. This is what the Big Ten coaches and athletic directors are wanting. Okay. So, and what you've said before, and what I have read in your work and at the Athletic, is that, and what Petitti said, he finally got to articulate it in public. He really hasn't much. Is the 4 teams would be decided 1 and 2, obviously, would play in a championship still. And then you'd have a champions weekend, like you discussed before, 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5. And what was funny or interesting for us as people who cover Iowa, I cover Iowa, you cover the Big Ten, you have covered Iowa, is that in Stuart Mandel's piece, he talked about, well, last year the 6 would have been Iowa, and do we really want 8-4 Iowa with Jackson? He didn't say Jackson Stratton, but with Jackson Stratton at quarterback, in the mix for a playoff bid? Were they worthy of that? And probably not last year, honestly, but that's the Big Ten stance also, that they would have that chance. So that's all correct, right? I have that correct? And that's where I think the Iowa sort of became a sticking point in Stewart's piece, right? That you don't want Iowa in there, 8-4 Iowa. So, yeah. And I know Illinois was on the cusp last year. They would have been the 5, right? So that would have been an interesting thing. Would have been Illinois, Indiana, right? Or Illinois, Penn State? Who would it have been? Illinois? Who would have been 4-5 last year?
All right, last year would have been Oregon was 1, Penn State was 2. They played in the championship.
Right, obviously. Yeah.
Indiana was the number 3 team, Ohio State 4, Illinois 5, and Iowa 6. Iowa would have played at Indiana. Okay. Illinois would have played at the Horseshoe. Okay. And that's
for
an
automatic spot in the Big Ten's mind. Yes.
Yeah. And so Iowa gets a lot of strays, unfortunately.
Yeah, always.
It's like, why does Iowa always get these strays? And even Beth and I kind of talked about that a little bit, just like, why do we always get in the crosshairs? But, and there's some merit to that because, number 6, but then there are also other teams that did not perform and play well. And I know I had a conversation earlier this summer when somebody's like, well, Iowa didn't deserve to be there. And I'm like, I'm not disagreeing. Iowa would have lost to Indiana. Let's just cut to the chase. They're not beating Indiana. But if they would have been 9-4, then they would have gotten in. Okay, so what? Clemson got in. Clemson didn't deserve, wasn't anything special last year, and they accidentally win the ACC title, by a fluke field goal at the last play of the game, and so I understand that, and I think that there's some merit to that, but we're talking about one team, and Michigan was 7th. And if Michigan,
well, that's what I was going to say. What if it was Michigan at 6? Then people wouldn't be as up in arms, right?
Yeah, it's just the name Iowa.
It's the name.
Yeah, like Clemson.
Just like last year, 10. Alabama was 9-3, and if there weren't named Alabama, it wouldn't have been such a gripe.
Oh, I know. I mean, Ole Miss was the best team out of that threesome going into, out of the 3 that got left out. They were all 9-3, and Clemson finished 10-4. So, I don't know. I think overall what we're looking at is, I think in some ways there's just not enough detail as to why this is a plan. And I think that there's also some merit to maybe there's not, I think the Big Ten should try to find a way to still play these 3 games. And you could say that, hey, this is an extra data point for our conference, and if you win, then you put yourself in a great position to be an at-large team, and if you lose, then oh well, but you still played a quality opponent and you lost, and still enter that debate. I think the games are what he wants most of all. But, and then there's the other factor, which has been, sliced apart and really, I think people are seeing things too differently, is that he believes that if it's just based on conference for your qualifying teams, then that will allow more games to be played with importance in non-conference play games. Like, for instance, it's not going to kill Ohio State to go play at LSU. So go play at LSU. Right. And it's not going to kill them from getting in a playoff spot, because if they accidentally lose to Michigan and Penn State, and then they're out. However, some people say, well, that just removes all the importance of these games. I'm like, well, who cares? I mean, they're actually good games and people care about them. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a lot of difference of opinion, and the Big Ten's taking it really, you get pounded for it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on the surface, I would say I side with the 5+11 personally, just because, I don't know. Like, what if the Big 12 has like 4 great? I mean, I guess they get the at-large, they have the at-larges or whatever. But what if they just have like 4 great teams one year? Kind of like the Big Ten. Indiana came out of nowhere last year. What if there's like teams like that in the ACC? I mean, what if? Who knows? What if Bill Belichick gets it going and Clemson's great again? And I mean, I feel like those at-larges kind of take care of. The Big Ten's going to get, if you have 16 teams, the Big Ten's going to get 4 anyway, at least, every year, pretty much. I mean, I'd be shocked if they didn't get 4, and probably 5, honestly. So, yeah. I mean, it's sort of, and then the other thing with as you were talking, and again, this is just a lean. I'm not like vehemently against the Big Ten here, but the other thing is, like, if Petitti wants to play these like 3 versus 6 games anyway, like, what would the incentive have been last year for Indiana to want to play that game? I mean, I guess they'd have to if it's on the schedule, but like, it hurts Indiana, right? I mean, Indiana, if they lose that game, maybe they don't get in, and then Iowa doesn't get in either, Like, I think that could hurt the Big Ten in that case. So I don't love that either from the Big Ten's point of view, but so I guess I lean 5-11, 5 conference champs, 11 at large. And just put your resume up against them. And then if they constantly reward the teams with 8-game conference schedules over 9, then you have an argument to make, I think. But until then, I don't know. I feel okay with the 5+11.
They already do reward those teams. The Big Ten has gotten screwed in the past because of that. And that was when we go back to 17 and 18 in particular, but in other years as well, where the Big Ten played 9 games and didn't get in because it lost a conference game. And you saw teams not get in the New Year's Six bowl games, which now would be the playoff, because of stacked up against. The perfect one is in 2018, both Florida and Penn State were, I believe, 9-3. And Penn State played 3 non-conference games. They played App State, which won 11. They played Pitt, which won its division in the ACC, and then a nobody, Kent State or something like that. And so nobody below G5 level. Florida plays 2 FCS opponents. A team like, I think it was Colorado State, was like 3-9, and then Florida State, which was 5-7. So Penn State plays 10 power conference teams. Florida plays 9. Florida plays 2 FCS opponents. Penn State plays 0. The Big Ten scheduled with that intent to say it's going to get them in better bowls and championship opportunities. And it did neither that year. And that's when it kind of came down to, all right, we need to start adjusting things. And so it's really a culmination effect of, we don't feel like we've been treated fairly by the system. We want to solve this for ourselves. We want each conference to pick these things. And if you're talking about the Big 12, then that's fine. One of the points that has been made is that they're, of the currently constituted Big 12 members, they've played a grand total of 2 CFP games, and TCU had them both. The ACC has had more success with Clemson and Florida State. And over the course of 4 years, they would have had 9 if it was a 5+11, or 9 if it was a whatever, blah, 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 number. So I think but here's the ultimate part of it is the Big Ten has veto power. It and the SEC are the ones who decide it. Now, they're not going to decide it unilaterally. They're going to involve everybody else, but they ultimately make the decision. They are not going to go to a 5+11 if the SEC stays at 8. They'll stay at where they are right now today, and they are drawing that line because of, again, they play 8 power conference games, and 13 out of 16 only play, 9, and then 3 play 10. In the Big Ten, it's a bad year because 5 play less than 10, power conference opponents. So they want to make sure that it's more of an even playing field, and right now it's not.
I definitely agree with that. And I think it's ridiculous that the SEC doesn't play 9. Sankey's saying an 8-game SEC schedule is tougher than a Big Ten 9-game schedule, essentially, right? He basically said that at SEC Media Days.
Yeah.
It's silly. I mean, you don't even have like a full sample size of the new Big Ten yet. I mean, you just brought in 4 pretty quality programs, especially USC, Oregon, Washington, was in the national title game a couple years ago. Oregon, number 1 seed last year. USC traditionally very strong. They got Lincoln Riley. And it's not like UCLA is just chopped liver. So it's not Rutgers. So the Big Ten has gotten a lot stronger through expansion. I know the SEC has too, with Oklahoma and Texas, theoretically. I mean, definitely. So, but it's that part does bother me. And I do understand that side of it, drawing the line in the sand. For the big, that's your bargaining chip, then go for it. If that's what it is, if it's a negotiating ploy potentially, that's all right. So what's the end game here, Scott? What happens? I mean, what if there's a stalemate? What do you think? Where do you think this goes?
I think December 1st is the deadline. They have to decide by then whether they go to a 16-team playoff or remain at 12 or say, hey, we're not going to have a playoff at all. We're going to go back to just strictly bowls, which won't happen, by the way.
Let's go to the computers, the BCS. Yeah.
So you've got 4 months to figure this out. I think at this point, the Big Ten has now made its push. It's needed to. It needed to 2 months ago. It's now made its push. Its efforts are out there. The coaches are in complete and utter lockstep, and they praised Tony Petitti, and they were pretty adamant about it. Same thing with the ADs. They like this plan. And even as you said with Indiana, they've all accepted it. They think it's important. And then, Indiana could still get in as an at-large because there'd be at-large opportunities there. But their point is that Indiana was 8-1. Ohio State was 7-2 last year. Illinois was 6-3. They never play, Illinois didn't play either one of those teams. How do we know? They lost to Penn State and Oregon and Minnesota, who won 8 games. I mean, they're a pretty decent team. How do you know who's better? So let's just play it this way. Plus, it's great TV and more revenue and awesome games on campus. At least 2 of them would be. I mean, the 2 lower ones will be campus games. We'll see what happens. Even Ferentz was very much for it. And he likes the idea of it. And here's the best part for Iowa, if we wanted to get into that angle of it, is that with the Big Ten West, it kept teams involved longer. And
that's true.
The Big Ten East was very much top heavy. You had Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, and Michigan State from time to time was really good. The rest, Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers were, you could say, 12, 13, and 14 among programs over a 10-year period. So you just had this wide disparity. The West was more bunched together, more even. Some were bad. Illinois was bad. Purdue was bad for the most part. But it allowed those teams to remain in competition into November for a divisional title. This would allow teams that if you start off 3-2 because damn, you played Ohio State and Oregon, or Penn State on the road and you lose a rivalry game or something, now you say I still have a chance. And if you get to November and you're a good team and you're 3-2 and you win out, You're 7-2. You get a chance to get to the playoff. That's something to play for, because we've never really had it like this before, where it'd be a 4-team playoff. So then you're playing for, all right, are we going to go to the Citrus Bowl or Tampa this year? Or we're going to go to the Music City Bowl. Well, we know the value of those bowl games have dropped considerably. So that's where they're at. Now, it matters a lot for the other leagues. I could talk about them too if you want, but I don't think we need to on Legends and Leaders, but maybe Big 12 Legends and Leaders or something.
Legends and Listeners.
Legends and Listeners. I'm sorry, Jed, on that one.
I do like the idea of just having more stuff to play for. As a purist type of sports fan, I don't like when playoffs expand. I don't like when the NASCAR playoffs expanded. I don't like when the MLB playoffs expanded. So I generally like the really best. I like the best teams to get into the tournament. And it's not like you can't. It's never going to be like the NFL, because you're just never going to have those balanced schedules. So I don't know. But I guess if Iowa, if you're playing for the 6th spot late in the season, there is something to be said about that. If Iowa goes, let's say it was this year, Iowa goes into, okay, they got to beat USC, Michigan State, and Nebraska. They win out, they get the 6th seed. That's something to play for, even if you're let's say you're 5-4 even at that point.
Well, yeah,
it is something, but I don't know if it's like you deserve to be a playoff team, but so.
But what if they're playing Nebraska for the right to go to that play-in game?
Yeah, right.
What if
it'll mean a lot more than it has? Yeah.
Yeah. What if the Axe game means, hey, you're going to be the 5th seed or you're out? Yeah. That's real. That's impactful. I mean, it's beyond the rivalry, and you're going to see, it's kind of like the rush the court moments for those, lower division teams, and I should say, not mid-majors conferences and basketball season. So I think that there's plenty of room for disagreement and discussion, and they're going to definitely have it. My assumption is, now that the Big Ten has kind of went and made a big push, everybody's going to practice next week, then it probably leaves the scene after I write my story, hopefully, which is later tonight, and for this for like Monday. But then after that, it'll probably come into the conference. It'll be commissioner level discussions for a while, which is probably healthy, because everybody needs, the football teams need testosterone shots getting ready for the football season, right, Chad?
That's right. But yeah, one of my favorite photos that I saw at a Big Ten Media Days, Scott, was you with there it is, with the Nebraska. Now you do that every year, or at least the last 3 years, with the Nebraska mannequin.
Yes.
For whatever. Why do you choose Nebraska? Just kind of to be funny, or what?
Yeah, I did it the first year in 2023, as you see there, just as hey, I'm just going to be funny here, there's because I think at that point I'd been really, it's like getting the Caitlin Clark factor that got, they really got people riled up. And then I'm like, oh, what the hell, I'll do it again. And then this year I'm like, I got to make a tradition of this. So I went and found my other 2 photos. But I think I look a little bit better thanks to Gameday Men's Health.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. You look trim in that 2025 picture compared to 2024. So it just goes to show what Gameday Men's Health has done for both of us here in the last year plus with the testosterone replacement therapy. Gameday Men's Health is there for you to get you back in the game. They're a proud sponsor of our show. They're really happy with all the business that they've gotten, and it's good business, because everyone, a lot of men's lives have been helped and changed, including our own, by visiting Gameday Men's Health on a regular basis. I feel great. I've been doing more like upper body work lately, which is kind of hindering my running a little bit, but it's also fun. You got that testosterone pumping through your veins. You might as well use it, right? So get connected with Gameday Men's Health for a private, no obligation, free consultation at GamedayMen'sHealth.com, or one of their locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. I guess you got your shot on Monday, so you're good. I was going to say, where'd you get it this week? But you're good. I'm out of town next week. I got to get it. I had to get a to-go needle, which I always hate. But I hate the process of it, but I can't miss it. You got to have that weekly shot.
Yeah, get it stuck in your butt and away you go. I suppose.
Yep.
But
my wife will do the honors. Yep.
Ah, there you go.
Yep. Jeez. Game Day Men's Health, everyone.
Yeah.
No, it's been we love their sponsorship. We love their partnership. We're thankful they continue to be strong partners with us on the show. We're going to talk some Iowa specific stuff here in a bit, Scott. But I did want to ask, like, what outside of the conference, or the playoff push and the conference animosity, like team wise, any headliners? What are people talking about out there in Vegas?
Today was an interesting day because Nico Iamaleava was there for the first time. And I got in a little bit with him, but that was mainly Bruce Feldman's story for us. But, it was interesting talking to Deshaun Foster, who I think is matured a little bit at this,
Yeah, how was his opening statement this year? I missed it.
It was fine, he was good. So, but, I think with, one thing that Deshaun Foster said kind of off to the side, I made sense. It's like, well, why did you bring him here? He's like, it's time for him to tell his story. Let him tell his story. And then basically let's let him talk now. I get the story out there and then we can focus on football, which is always a good thing. I think when you're talking about, topics like this is, it's a controversial situation. He wasn't really going to go into detail about the money, whatever it is, but it's, this one in this situation, it was really good to hear from him. I think PJ Fleck was really interesting, sold his team, talked about him being delusional. That was a phrase, we want to be delusional, meaning that they can. What? I know. And I'm like, that's an interesting word there, PJ. But he, meaning that he thought that they were going to have think big, think college football playoff, don't shut it down. And so it kind of looks delusional, but accept it. And PJ is, the Energizer Bunny with a Red Bull and an espresso. So, he was certainly that right off the bat. PJ was in rare form. He took 14 minutes of his 15 minutes to talk about everything there. But he really likes his team. And they're really confident in their quarterback, Drake Lindsey,
really?
who they brought a redshirt freshman who moved in there number 2. They brought a guy in from Georgia Tech who they thought might end up starting, and Drake Lindsey beat him out. And athletic 6'5" guy. I spent a lot of time with Coy Parrish, and who is Cooper DeJean-esque. Kind of for Iowa fans, he's kind of like a 1980s villain in a rom-com, like Biff Tanner, and just he's kind of has this interesting hair and everything, but you can't question he's a baller. He's going to play on offense too, so they want to So he's a 3-tool player. He's going to be a returner, and and everybody's kind of said, yeah, he's like Cooper DeJean. And so I asked him, I said, there's people talking about Cooper DeJean, like you're Cooper DeJean, and he's like, I Googled him when I was in high school, and I saw he long jump like 24 feet. And so I'm like, I got to do that too. And he goes, I never did. And I was so mad. But he loves the way he plays and stuff. And a PJ of all people went on like somebody asked him just about Floyd of Rosedale rivalry. And he went on a 2-minute, talk about just how important it is, how much he respects the Iowa program, and just how the program, the sustainability, and how that's what he strives for with that. He goes, you're talking Hayden Fry and Kirk Ferentz, 47 years of coaches. He is like, that's we're trying to have that sustainable culture that they've had, and that's a rivalry that he totally respects, and the trophy, of course, is the best in the world, in my opinion. But and everybody else's should be too. But
well, I mean, if Minnesota is good, that just adds to Iowa's crazy home schedule. Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, 3 playoff teams, Minnesota, Michigan State.
Can you believe, Chad, though, seriously, the first 2 games sold out was Indiana and Minnesota? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
You have Oregon and Penn State,
Well, I know the single game prices are very high on those games for sure. But yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, Indiana's early enough in the year. You've got a guaranteed earlier game. I mean, I don't know. It looks like it's. I don't know. I don't know why.
In years past, those would have been games in the Big Ten anyway that they would have been sold out or whatever, but they wouldn't have been right out the gate. Now, granted, they combined for 19 wins last year. Minnesota won 8, and Indiana won 11. They're both really good, and so I could see that being a factor.
Yeah, I think weather also. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people didn't think that through, but I feel like late September to mid-October, which is when the Minnesota game is usually pretty good weather, as opposed to the hot early games or the cold late games. So I don't know. Interesting. Anything else stand out? I always like going there, because it sucks I didn't go this year, but I wanted Tyler to go. He wanted to go to Vegas. I was glad he did. He did a great job for the Des Moines Register. But I always try to get a sense for maybe this team's better than I thought. Maybe this team's worse than I thought. Any feel from you on any teams like that maybe that's interesting. Maybe they're going to be decent, or vice versa.
I would say that I had a pretty good feel of most of the teams of what I thought anyway, and maybe Minnesota was the one that reinforced that a little bit more than I thought. Washington certainly did, which I've been high on them, and I did. I had a side convo with Jed Fish, and then talked to Damon Williams, who I think is going to be just an electrifying quarterback. I think he's going to be tremendous, and we did a lot of side survey type stuff, which was pretty interesting on that we're going to compile for The Athletic, that we've gone to all the media days and grabbed, and but really I still get a pretty much the same feel for most of these teams that I did going into it. Nothing really kind of jumped out at me. Maybe Oregon, you picked them to win it, so I didn't pick them to win it, but I still think that they're going to be really good. So I maybe that's being a little more reinforced. But but overall, what I do believe, Petitti said it, and I truly believe that this is the most depth the Big Ten's ever had. Because I really think that there's 10 or 11 teams that are, if you were to tell me that Washington or Minnesota or Iowa could win 9 or 10 games and be in playoff contention, I go, okay. And then if you were to tell me that no, they're going to be 6 or 7 win teams, I'd say, okay, based on the schedule. And maybe Wisconsin might be on the other side of things, which we've talked about, is they just seem to be struggling. Now, Luke Fickell kind of pressed on that they decided to go hard with more mass on the defensive line, that they got crushed late in the year, and we saw it firsthand.
Right.
And they had only one guy that weighed 300 pounds. Now they have 7 on that side of the ball. So but we'll see, because they lost some good guys in the portal too.
Interesting. Well, let's talk a little Hawkeyes here, because that'll inevitably that's part of the Big Ten talk here too for us.
Yeah.
And I always think Kirk Ferentz's local media side session is the most valuable piece of that whole week, more than the players, more than anything, because it feels like you pull out 1 or 2 things every year that's interesting. And I thought, I tweeted this, probably the most intriguing quote to me, Scott, was, and it's in line with everything we've heard and seen, but Kirk Ferentz said this, it's kind of interesting. He's talking about the wide receivers. I've talked about the offensive line. A year ago, I felt like we finally were getting there, and maybe it would start coming together. It's almost like the mirror image with the receivers this year. Now, you've done the story, or the interview with George Barnett. We know how good the O-line was last year for Iowa, better than people even realized. I think that's been kind of your takeaway, and no question they've got 2 really talented guys coming back. 3 if counting both Stevens, but Logan Jones and Jennings Dunker preseason all Big Ten mentions. Out of 15 names, Iowa gets 2 offensive linemen on that list. That's hard to do. If he's saying that about the receivers this year, that he was thinking about the O-line last year, then that tells me that the head coach is very high on this receivers group, which is a really, really encouraging thing for Iowa's offense.
Sure. And last week we went in detail last week, the last couple of days, we went into detail about the receiving core and looked at probably 8 players that we felt like could be strong contributors, and the depth and improvements that they've made there. And that seems to be something that, has kind of come through in their confidence with that unit. And that's, it's a good thing, because Iowa does need to show that. And, when you're dealing with selection committees, if you have a good year, you're going to have to be flashy. You can't just
That's true. I totally agree.
You can't win anymore and rest on 13-10. It just does. You can do that a couple of times, but you can't do it throughout the season. And you've got to score points. You got to make people believe that you can compete and win games with your offense in the postseason. And I think that's something they did. And if there was one other thing that he said on the side, I wasn't present for the side one. I was on the podium because I was talking to Petitti at the time. But on the side, he brought up Jalen Watson as a player that's really taken, has really grown on the secondary. And I think when you throw in, and he brought up Barrios as well, and that was more on the podium. But I think, if he believes that Jalen Watson has taken those strides, and if Khalid Barrios comes in and you have Lee and Hall, who he thinks have improved a lot, and we think Hall's going to be their number one, that's a pretty good thing for them to have 4 cornerbacks that they can throw in there, because last year that was a big hole for them. Right cornerback got slaughtered a lot. They gave a lot of big plays. They got beat on a lot of regular passes, and so they need to be improved there. And if he's bringing up Jalen Watson, that's a good thing, because I kind of look at him and KJ Parker. Both of them redshirt freshmen as guys that came in. They're probably interchangeable. They could end up on offense or defense, and they just chose to go this route with both of them. And if both of them could see the field, that's maybe it's a special team situation for Watson mostly, but he talked about him being a gunner and taking people out, and I'm like, okay, that's a good thing. When you're aggressive on special teams, that always translates to, especially on defense, to your main position.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good name to drop in there, Scott. I think we both maybe predicted Deshaun Lee or Shaheed Barrows would be, our choice or prediction for number 1 corner opposite TJ Hall week 1. Obviously a long way to go there. Fall camp doesn't begin until July 30th, but Jalen Watson, definitely a name to watch there. And again, I keep hearing coaches think the back end is going to be better than it was last year. And so, we don't know specifically what that means, but if they think that, then it's probably going to be right.
Well, you look at the athletic ability there, Chad. That's Jamari Harris was really good, and left it for the end of the year. But let's acknowledge him for what he was able to bring. He was one of the 4 or 5 best corners in the Big Ten last year. But at safety, you had Quinn, who has been around for a long time. Heady player, smart player. It is an upgrade athletically. It's hard to say if he'll be in the right positions, whether it is, any of the 3. But and same thing with Sebastian Castro, who is a, hard hitter, good at times in space, but not necessarily running with receivers down the field. And I think, at the cash. So I think that they've got a few better athletes, and Cohen Entringer, it's kind of amazing. And Kirk did touch on this today, that for what people think of Cohen Entringer, here's a guy that has started, 1 game, and he's voted by his team, by his peers, the leadership council, to go to Big Ten media days. That says a lot about what they think of him. And Kirk brought up, hey, he had that one big play. Everybody's seen that, but he's like that every single day. So he's going to bring something. He's going to be, an Iowa star. Who knows what that means beyond that. But they've since 2009, Ohio State and Iowa have had the same number of first-team All-Big Ten selections. So he's got a chance to be that next one.
Wow, first-team All-Big Ten. I mean, that's that'd be a really good year from the bench to first-team All-Big Ten. But certainly he's got he has the belief of his teammates and his coaches. That would be a good bet to make, Scott. Especially, maybe they offer that at Circa Sports. I don't know. Could be. You can check it out in Vegas before you leave town. But Circa is Iowa's best online sports book, a national name in the sports gambling sphere. You see the promo on the screen there. $21 million in guaranteed prize money via the Circa Millions and Circa Survivor contests. These are your Survivor, your Survivor pools type thing. Your betting spreads, picking games. It's a lot of fun. Have you ever been in a Survivor pool, Scott?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's hard. It's harder than it sounds.
I've been at Circa twice this week here in Vegas, including last night. We're way too late, and I was trying to get a parlay, and they didn't quite have them ready yet. Because I was going to do a week one parlay, but we'll see.
Okay, well, that's the only strike on Circa, but it looked beautiful from the pictures I saw.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to be there, and I was there Monday, and I was there last night. And probably not tonight. But,
Okay. More details for all those contests at circasports.com. Keep listening to Iowa Everywhere for more Circa Sports plugs and information. I know Chris was out there this week. I was on his show on Monday. And you were on the CW pod, is that right?
I did not make an appearance
you were one of them?
there.
No,
I was not there, but I did meet with Chris.
Okay.
It was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Well, let's talk about Iowa quarterbacks. That was another big topic out of Thursday. Not a surprise, but Ferentz definitively saying we expect Mark Gronowski to be our starter. I would say when I met with Tim Lester for 2.5 hours a couple weeks or whenever that was, July. What day did we interview? July 16th, I think it was. He thought it might be a competition. So we'll see. He's going to put him out there and compete. But Gronowski, obviously, you would expect to be the starter. But I think at least one thing Tyler Tashman, my colleague, relayed to me was that Ferentz said, our top 3 quarterbacks are new. And they weren't here in the fall. And that tells me, and that's in line with what I've been hearing, that Hank Brown and Jeremy Hecklinski are the likely 2-3, and Jackson Stratton's going to have a tough time maybe cracking into that top 3 despite starting 2 games last year, Scott. So interesting movement, or I guess you could say, at quarterback. I think they're just really high on Hecklinski.
I don't think that's really a surprise, that what would happen with, Jackson Stratton was a walk-on. He did a nice job, as nice as possible. But, Jeremy Hecklinski was a, highly touted pickup for Wake Forest. And, with Warren Ruggiero, coming to Iowa, that was a natural transition there. So he's got some, supporter in-house. And but, yeah, I mean, Kirk's, with Kirk, there are certain things that stand out. Like we would anticipate Mark being our starter. That means Mark's the starter. I mean, it doesn't really come out and say that, Right. And then he kind of follows it up by, well, if one of those other guys can, beat him out, great.
Yeah, if someone beats out Brandon Sheriff, great.
Yeah. He says that, he used to always add with a shame on them or something like, if Tyler Linderbaum gets beat out, we always have competition, but if Tyler Linderbaum gets beat out, then shame on him,
Yeah.
So that tells you that they're completely, Kirk's the head coach. He's going to make the call at quarterback. He may not make the call on the plays, but he's going to make the call on the quarterback because he has to own that. And that doesn't mean Tim Lester is not going to say, hey, he's really, really, really better. But, Kirk's it's very difficult to get him off quarterback,
Yeah, that is true. That's one area where he likes to have that guy in place. I understand it because that's the guy that leads your team. It's a very team-oriented culture, and he likes having that leader in the locker room. And it seems like Gronowski has done every single thing, whether it's performance-related in the weight room, conditioning. We talked about him winning the semis, sprints, and conditioning this summer with Ray Braithwaite, and he's done it all. Now he has to go out and show it with the throwing. That's the one thing Tim Lester really wants to see. Because he has a real natural type thrower in Hank Brown and also Jeremy Heklinski. I'm not saying they're going to beat him out, but I think those guys are going to be. I think the hope is, the feeling was that Ferentz also relayed was he hopes that those two guys are competing for the starting job next year. Like that they have two guys that they don't have to go to the portal for after this year. That they know Brown and Heklinski, they could have a really good competition next spring of 2026. And, Iowa doesn't have to dip into the portal and pay $2 million or whatever. So that's the goal. And it seems like it's on a good track. Ferentz talked about how much better the room is than it was a year ago, which that goes without saying, but yeah, it feels like the quarterback room is on a really good track. Last thing, I know you talked to Beth Getz while you were there. Was that a solo too? I saw her on the side, but you talked to her in like one-on-one too? Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I talked to her within the group, and then we just had a side conversation for a while, because we know each other and said hi, things like that. She went to Scotland. Her in-laws, that's where they're from, their family history. So that was a break. Her next weekend, I think it is, her parents are aging, and they're kind of doing one big family trip to Colorado. So that's nice. But beyond that, and more pertaining to Iowa life and not Beth Getz's personal life, some of the things that came out that I thought were really interesting were, I asked her about rev share and how it's being dispersed. It's not so much, she's not going to tell you the percentages, like 68% is going to this and 41's this. It's that not every student athlete, unlike at Iowa State, where every athlete gets something, that's not the case at Iowa. 4 sports are getting something: football, men's, women's basketball, and wrestling. And then she said that there could be individuals in other sports that get something. So, hey, you got the best sprinter, and if the Eddyville kid was able to come back or something, you might want to give him a few bucks. But I thought that was interesting. Certainly, some of the discussions about Carver Hawkeye Arena, I thought were interesting. Tyler was the one who mainly asked about that, and there was good questions, and bringing up the risers, and she said she's walking and checking the widths to see what could go on, and she's like, I know my staff really didn't like that, but she wanted to do something different and better, and it's something to do it now rather than wait till a full renovation, and I think you got to applaud her for that. Why wait? Hey, if you're going to put in risers in the corner, and then there's I think it was Mike Halas who asked, rightly so, why do Carver renovation? And she's like, you could really make a strong case for why do any facility renovation now in the way the world is in college athletics, but this is a revenue generating opportunity for us at Carver Hawkeye Arena. It's whether it's to put in premium seating or it's to do some other things with the arena, leverage your assets while you can. Maybe it's rent it out. Maybe it's do other things, have concerts. And of course, as we said, premium seating for basketball and the other sports. But that was also, I thought, pretty telling why that she thinks it's big. And it's 40 years old. There's things that need to be fixed with it, but also to prepare it for another 40 years, and because you're going to need those revenues. It's $20.5 million this year. It's not going to be $20.5 million next year. It'll be 22, 23 million and on up, and so there's a lot there. So. Yeah, and she also said men's basketball season ticket sales are going well, up from last year already. So that's, that's not a surprise. There's a lot of excitement about the Ben McCollum era, but I think that's in line with what we, think, and that probably shows that it's been a good move already. We know it has been to bring in McCollum and this team, these players, I should say. So, I have no problem with just going with the 4 sports. I don't think there's any reason to expand beyond that. No offense to those other sports, but if you're Iowa right now, Scott, you got to say, wrestling probably could be doing better. Obviously, the wrestling diehards know that they would love to be on top and not number 2 or number 3, but wrestling is still a national brand, obviously, and top 5 national program at minimum, top 3 probably. Women's basketball, as high as it's ever been, essentially, at least in its own orbit here. And I just finished the summer of women's basketball practices, and man, there's a lot of excitement about the newcomer. All the newcomers that they brought in are legit, and so that's going well. You have to say men's basketball is on the upswing, no question about it. We think they've got a rock star coach potentially, and then football is football. We're talking about them being I think they're going to be could be a top 4 team in the Big Ten this year, if they play well. And so, I mean, you think about that. If you've got $20.5 million to spend, you do not need to go beyond those 4 sports, Scott.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What is unfortunate is who's the collateral damage? It's baseball. Baseball's the one that's gonna kind of hurt from this, and wrestling has the potential to hurt as well. But I think that's where this what you have to look at is the big picture. The decision to allow collectives again, just the CSC or whatever, just saying, well, we're not even going to mess with this. That's probably not a bad thing for Iowa if you can find a way to maybe, have your own wrestling collective and use most of the funding from that to fund your wrestlers. And that's, and then you can shorten it again to football and men's basketball and women's basketball. I think that's pretty good. And Beth and I have talked about this previously, on the side and stuff. There's nothing that it's like automatic. What happens if volleyball, for instance, all of a sudden, wow, you're the 8th best program in the Big Ten, and maybe you make the national tournament, or maybe you just barely miss it. And it's like, this is surging. People are going to these games, are excited about it. Maybe that's an opportunity. You got to say, what, we've got to really evaluate this, in a different way. And, they spent obviously a lot in basketball this year. What's the next step? Because you got to be careful with football. It's like, you just don't want to forfeit too much from it. You can cut away here, a little bit there. But if you're getting in competitive situations with your rivals over certain players, that's the difference in 3rd and 4 in the 4th quarter. You just got to narrow it down that pass rusher got to the quarterback and forced you to punt, or your left tackle pushed him to the ground and you completed that pass for a first down. So, winning and losing football games are more important than anything else. So, I know, but anyway.
Exactly. And she did say, and she has said, that it's a year-by-year thing. So what happened, what they spend this year may be completely different next year. So, and that's a smart way to go. I mean, you never know. Like, what if softball starts getting good? I don't know.
Absolutely.
I mean, just like, I saw they got a good recruit from in-state the other day. So, anyway.
The good thing is,
go ahead.
I was going to say, just want to add to that. The good thing is that does provide third-party NIL opportunities. Yeah. That maybe not necessarily through the revenue sharing part of it, but if you're use a PJ Fleckism, an elite softball player, or an elite player in baseball, that you can find ways to find that business, hey, you want to come out and Billion Auto or, Circa Sports. Maybe not. I mean, you can't do that. You can do it for us, but not for them. But, a car lot or whatever, you can find ways to make that work.
Absolutely. Well, hey, folks, we're really excited to get you 2 shows in this week. That's a rarity because we're a 1-show-a-week thing on Iowa Everywhere. But we got you 2 shows this week, and that's because I'm on vacation next week, so no shows. No Legends and Listeners next week. This counts for your second show, or your next week's show, I guess you could say. But we'll be back with you in early August as Iowa football fall camp will be underway by then. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Thanks again for joining us here on Legends and Listeners, only on Iowa Everywhere.